Greetings everybody, I'm Mo. Welcome to the channel, Wondershire Farm. Today we're going to talk about retort canning. What is it, how I do it, and what's the procedure, because it's kind of unique. Today we're going to talk about retort canning. What is it, how I do it, and what's the procedure, because it's kind of unique. The common definition of retort is things that are canned in a flexible can. So something that is in one of the metallized retort pouches. We're not talking about mylar pouches, but actual retort pouches. I'll show you a picture of them. That is the common term for retort, but it's not the actual term. The scientific definition of retort is anything that is canned in a pressurized vessel. It could be a metal can, as in like vegetables that are in your cabinet. It could be in a pouch, and it could be in a jar. Anything that goes through a pressurized canning process. The canning process itself is called retorting, but it is not the common term. We use the common term here, which means inside a flexible pouch. First, a disclaimer, I'm not an expert. This channel and in this video is a diary of what I do in my own kitchen. I'm not going to advise you of what you should do. You can do whatever you feel safe. Do your own research. Darwinism is real, and you and only you are responsible for what you eat and how you preserve the food for your home. What do you need for retort canning? You need a kitchen scale, retort pouches or flexible cans. You need a chamber-style vacuum sealer. You cannot use a suction model. Here's a picture of one here. You cannot use this type of vacuum sealer. They will not do the same thing. A chamber vacuum sealer has a individual chamber. The vacuum is pulled on the chamber, and the pouch or ingredients are inside it are not there's no suction. Then it seals the package inside this chamber in negative pressure, and then it releases it. That releasing process is what makes this whole system work. There are many different kinds of vacuum machines. You have to be careful which one that you get for retort. I'm using a Avid Armor UV32, and it is not designed for retort. It will do it, but it's not designed for it. Common ones that are designed for it are the JVC 100 and anything by Vac Master, like the VP 215. They're very, very good. I happen to not have the budget, so I went with the cheapest I could do, and I pretty much believe that the UV32 is probably the cheapest one you can get away with retorting. You'll need a pressure canner. I use a Instapot for my canning, but you could use a stovetop pressure canner. You can use a All-American pressure canner or Presto pressure canner. Anything that you would normally pressure can jars, you can use for this process. The process for retort canning. I gather all my ingredients, what I'm going to put in my cans for the day. And I also get together my kitchen scale, my retort pouches. I warm up my vacuum chamber sealer, and I have my pressure canner nearby and open. The process that I use, I weigh the food that's going in the pouch. Each pouch has a very specific amount of weight it's supposed to handle. The pouches that I'll be showing you in this video are what are called pint-size pouches, which holds only 8 ounces of food. Just like a pint-sized jar, which is a 16-ounce jar, you're only allowed to load it with half the amount of food by weight. So a 16-ounce jar, a ball canning jar, you should only put 8 ounces of actual food in it. The rest will be liquid. With retort, you don't have the liquid. You don't need it. It's not required. So you're only loading a pint-size retort pouch with 8 ounces, and that's by weight of food. If you go over, you risk the chances of splitting the pouches. I weigh the food that I'm putting in the pouch. Then I load the pouch. I often use frozen items for inside the pouch. Frozen food defrosts inside the pouch as the temp of the water heats up inside the canner. So using frozen items is okay. If I'm adding a liquid to a recipe, I'll often freeze the liquid in cubes and just add the cubes. When the weight is right, I can scale it better. Also, I don't have to worry about boiling the water in the vacuum, in the chamber vac, which it will do when it gets to the right pressure. So I'll load the pouches. I'll take the pouches and I'll put all the ingredients I want in them, and I'll seal them in the vacuum sealer. The vacuum sealer will bring down the pressure to at least a negative 15 psi. It'll hold it for a few seconds. I usually set mine to go to negative 15 psi, and then I hold it for at least 10 seconds past that point. Then it will seal. With Retort pouches, you have to use pretty much the highest seal setting you can use. But check your manufacturer's instructions for your vacuum sealer. It will have a Retort setting or the guidance for Retort. Read the manual. Mine, it's 45 seconds or greater and a heat temperature of 9. So that's what I follow. Once I've sealed the pouch, because I'm using a UV32, which is not designed for Retort, I will have to go through multiple sealing. I will have to seal more than once. Most of the time I seal 3 times. I hit the vacuum seal button first to bring it down to the lowest pressure. Then I use the seal twice. Once when turning it over to get the other side of the pouch good and hot. It's not required. It's just something that I do to make sure I get good seals. Once I'm done with the pouch, I put it in my vacuum, in my canner, and I just let it sit there. And I continue working like an assembly line going through my pouches. My pressure canner can hold 6 pint-sized bags of pouches without a problem. It can hold, I've put 7 in sometimes, depending on how thought out the product is, but 6 is about normal for me. My pressure canner normally handles 4 pint-sized jars, and since I can put 6 pint-sized pouches in there, I can get it quite a bit. I can can quite a bit more by using pouches rather than jars. You can these pouches just like you do when you're canning jars. So whatever the procedure is for your pressure, based on your altitude, plus the cook time, based on what ingredients you have, all is the same as it is from normal canning. There is no difference, with this one slight exception. And it's not a requirement, it's just a suggestion. I got this information from VacuPack, or vacuumpackers.com. They're probably the most experienced in vacuum packing and retorting, like more than 25 years experience in the commercial end of the business. And they say to add about 30% more time for the recipe. Because you can put so much more volume of pint-sized pouches inside a pressure canner than you can jars, they increase the time. They actually did testing to come up with that time, which is good. I like following their guidelines whenever I can. I've looked into the official guidance on the more time, referencing the FDA commercial canning instructions, and the time actually is reduced in their guidance for flexible cans, because retort cans can transfer heat easier than a glass jar can. I follow the guidelines from VacuPack, but that's me. You can choose to do what you want to do. You're the one in charge of your own kitchen. Inside the bottom of the canner, you need the rack, just like you would for normal canning. When you're filling up water, you only need about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water on the pouches. I set my canner and I let it start. When it's done, I leave it alone. Let it come down to room temperature and 0 pressure on its own. Because I have an automatic canner, it will keep it warm. I don't need to do that. I just go ahead and turn it off. When it's completely down to 0 pressure and it's cool to the touch, then I'll open it and pull my pouches out. The pouches swell up. I mean, they swell up big. And they take up all the room inside the canner. So if you take it off too early, they will burst because you've taken off one side. So leave it alone, let it cool down completely to room temperature. That brings it up, I should talk about bursting pouches, because that's a common thing that happens. Bursting isn't like explosive or anything, it just means that they've opened up and some of the ingredients have leaked out. It happens in regular jar canning all the time. The stuff boils over the top of them. It's the same that's happening in a retort pouch, it's just splitting one of the seams. There are some things I found that made it easier for me so I don't burst them as often. Don't overfill the pouches. If it's a pint-sized pouch, I only put 8 ounces of food in it. I triple check my seal. I seal and seal again, and then I pull it out and I try to open it. If I can open it, then I'll go back and start my sealing procedure all over again. I wait for the temperature to come down naturally. And the other is fill the canner. You want enough room between this to get your hand down in there between pouches, but you don't want too much because they're going to swell up. So you want to keep it full. On my canner, I need to put at least 5, 6 preferably. So if I burst a pouch, that's what we're eating for dinner or lunch that day. After I've pulled the pouches out and they're cool and they're dry, drying them off with a towel, I label the pouches so I can store them. I'm careful to mark the contents and the month and the year that I retorted them. If you follow the commercial canner's information on retort pouches, it's good for 12 to 18 months when stored at room temperature. Less if it's stored at warmer temperatures, more if it's stored at colder temperatures. For me at my house, I do not store anything longer than 18 months, but that is my decision, and you have to do your own research and make your own decision on that. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to have another video soon. Thank you.